My mom stole our birthday presents to fund her shopping addiction and poisoned my little brother for disability checks which she spent. So I orchestrated her public humiliation and got her locked up in the most satisfying revenge possible. My mom is the type of person to sell the family pet while you're at school, just so she can buy herself the newest iPhone. And since I'm the oldest sister, I realized this pretty fast. My stuff would go missing, and I'd find it in my mom's room. Or the day after it disappeared, my mom would come home with a new designer purse. But whenever I tried to talk to anyone about it, they would try to convince me that I was just imagining things, and that I shouldn't be talking about my mom like that. But the worst part was when my little brother Lucas was born. He was 10 years younger than me, with these big blue eyes that were always filled with joy. For his first, second, and third birthday, my mom stole his gifts and exchanged them for cash the next day. I figured that confronting her wasn't worth it, since she would probably just hit me for being ungrateful or not letting mommy be happy. But on his fourth, I knew I had to say something, because Lucas was cute, but he also wasn't dumb, and I knew he was old enough to notice if his gifts vanished into thin air. I remember begging my mom, telling her I would get a babysitting job and give her the money she would make from selling it, but she crossed her arms and shook her head. "You selfish bitch. Your birthdays are the only times I actually get to buy stuff I want." I just sighed. Honestly, it made me understand why our dad had abandoned us, because it's not like we were poor. Quite the opposite, actually. She went on holidays once a year, spent all her money on plastic surgery, and we never struggled for food. Our mom just refused to spend a dime on us outside of the bare necessities, including letting us have gifts. So in the days leading up to Lucas's birthday, I became a borderline kleptomaniac because no one would hire me. Nothing crazy, just a few cheap toy cars and Lego figures. It's what I wish someone did for me when I was a child. On the day, his face was beaming. He got the zoomies and wouldn't shut up about how excited he was. Watching my mom get ready disgusted me. She wore a thick layer of makeup, as well as a skirt that she always said made her butt look big. Our birthdays were the only time of the year she'd wear fake eyelash extensions and get her nails done. As soon as we got there, she completely ignored Lucas and focused on batting her eyelashes with every dad she saw, even if they were standing right beside their wives. She would subtly tap her hand against their thigh while laughing, and constantly bite her bottom lip as if she was deep in thought all the time. Yuck. And since all of the dads were with their literal kids, they always seemed super uncomfortable. It's like my mom was the definition of peaked in high school. During the party games when everyone was watching Lucas, she pretended to be mom of the year, and Lucas was too young to understand what was going on, so he just thought that mommy loved him. Sigh. Then came the part that made me want to tear all my hair out and shove it down my mom's throat. Present opening time. Lucas was so careful with each gift, his little hands trembling with excitement as he peeled back the wrapping paper piece by piece. When he opened a remote control dinosaur from our cousin Jake, his eyes went wide. "It roars!" he squealed, hugging it to his chest. "And look, mommy, it walks!" My mom's fake smile got bigger. "Oh wow, baby. We'll put that somewhere safe so it doesn't get broken." I watched her mental calculator working overtime as more presents appeared. A tablet from Grandma, a bike from Uncle Tommy, a whole art set from our neighbor Mrs. D. Each gift made Lucas bounce in his seat, and each bounce made my stomach sink lower. "Mommy, can we set up my tablet when we get home?" Lucas asked, his face glowing. "Of course, sweetheart, but let's keep opening presents first." I tried to position myself between her and the gift table, but she was like a hawk. During cake time, while everyone sang happy birthday, I watched her load the presents into bags to keep them organized. She even had the audacity to loudly thank each gift giver again, making sure they saw her being a responsible mom by keeping track of everything. When we got home, Lucas immediately ran to the bags. "Tablet time! Tablet time! Zranya," he chanted. "Oh honey, it needs to charge first, and we need to set up parental controls. Maybe tomorrow." I knew she was going to sell them, so I hatched a plan. I went on her phone and posted stuff like, "I hate all white people," and within just 20 minutes I had gotten all her devices banned from being a merchant. I didn't even need to give Lucas the stuff I stole anymore. Lol. Unfortunately, she knew straight away that it was me, and she was ready to do anything to make me pay. The next morning, I woke up to my mom screaming at her phone. She kept refreshing her selling apps and getting the same error messages. Account suspended, violation of community guidelines, permanently banned. Her face was turning red, and I could see the veins popping out on her forehead, her perfectly applied makeup from the night before smeared across her face. I pretended to be asleep, but watched through barely open eyes as she threw her phone against the wall, leaving a dent in the plaster. She stormed into my room and yanked my blanket off, her nails digging into the fabric. The cold morning air hit me like a slap. She demanded to know what I did to her accounts, spit flying from her mouth as she screamed. I played dumb and asked what she was talking about, trying to keep my voice steady and confused. She grabbed my shoulders and shook me hard, my head snapping back and forth like a rag doll. I told her I didn't know anything about her selling accounts, maintaining my innocent act even as my heart raced. She slapped me across the face and called me a liar. The sting spread across my cheek like fire, and I could taste blood where my teeth cut into my lip. Then she smiled this creepy smile that made my skin crawl, the kind of smile that promised nothing good. She said if I wanted to play games, she knew how to play too. Her voice had gone quiet and cold, which was somehow worse than the screaming. As she left my room, I heard Lucas calling from down the hall, asking if he could play with his tablet now. The sound of his hopeful voice made my heart ache, but at least this time, his presence would still be there. Whatever my mother had planned for me, it was worth it. I should have known she'd retaliate fast. The next day at school, I got called to the counselor's office during second period. Mrs. Chen looked at me with this concerned expression that made my stomach drop. She said my mother had called with some troubling information about my recent behavior. Apparently, I'd been stealing from stores and needed immediate immediate psychological evaluation. She asked if everything was okay at home, her voice gentle but probing. I tried to explain, but Mrs. Chen kept writing notes on her yellow pad. She said my mother mentioned finding stolen items in my room and was worried about kleptomania. The irony almost made me laugh. My mother, the queen of theft, accusing me of stealing. I told Mrs. Chen it was complicated, but she just nodded in that way adults do when they think you're making excuses. She scheduled me for weekly sessions with the school psychologist starting next week. When I got home, Lucas was sitting on the couch crying. His little shoulders shook as he hiccuped between sobs. I rushed over and asked what was wrong. He said Mommy told him all his birthday toys were gone because I was bad. She'd said I took them to buy substances, which he didn't understand but knew was something terrible. I hugged him tight and promised his toys were safe, but he pulled away. Mommy said I was dangerous and he shouldn't trust me. I ran to my room and found my backpack dumped on the bed. Inside were 3 lipsticks from CVS with the security tag still on, a wallet that wasn't mine, and a handful of cheap jewelry I'd never seen before. My mom had planted evidence while I was at school. My hands shook as I took photos with my phone, knowing I needed proof of her setup. Then I checked my dresser drawers. More planted items, all with recent receipts tucked underneath. I heard my mom on the phone in the kitchen, fake crying to someone. She was saying she didn't know what to do with me anymore, that she'd found stolen goods and was scared for Lucas's safety. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with dramatic pauses and shaky voice. I recognized Aunt Patricia's voice through the speaker asking concerned questions. My mom spun tales about my supposed substance problem and how I'd threatened her when confronted. Over the next few days, she called every relative we had. Each story got more elaborate. I was stealing to support a substance habit. I was violent. I was mentally unstable. She told Grandma I'd pushed her down the stairs, told Uncle Tommy I'd stolen money from his wallet at the birthday party. The lies spread through our family like wildfire, and suddenly everyone was looking at me differently. Even Mrs. D next door started locking her door when she saw me coming. I tried recording my mom admitting the truth. I hid my phone behind the toaster and confronted her about Lucas's presents. She started laughing and said of course she was going to sell them, that I was stupid for thinking I could stop her. But just as she was getting to the good part, she noticed my phone. She grabbed it and smashed it against the wall, pieces of glass and plastic scattering across the kitchen floor. Then she ground the remains under her heel for good measure. That night, I waited until she was in the shower to search for Lucas's presents. I knew she kept them in her locked closet. She always did before finding buyers. I picked the lock with a bobby pin, a skill I'd learned from YouTube years ago. Inside, I found Lucas's tablet, still in its box, along with the RC dinosaur and art set. I was reaching for them when I heard her clear her throat behind me. She was standing there in her bathrobe, water still dripping from her hair. Her face was calm, which scared me more than anger would have. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911, telling them her daughter had assaulted her and was stealing from her room. I tried to leave, but she blocked the doorway, then started scratching her own arms, leaving red marks. She told the operator I was attacking her right now, to please hurry. I stood frozen, watching her hurt herself while blaming me. The scratches got deeper, some starting to bleed. She messed up her hair and knocked over a lamp, creating a scene of struggle. When she hung up, she smiled and told me I should have minded my own business. I backed into the corner of her closet, surrounded by designer bags bought with our stolen birthday money. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers, both looking tired and ready to believe whatever story they heard first. My mom had perfected her victim act, tears streaming, voice shaking, showing off her self-inflicted scratches. She said I'd attacked her when she caught me stealing, that I'd been violent before but never this bad. The officers looked at me with disgust as one reached for his handcuffs. Just then, Mrs. D appeared at the front door. She must have seen the police cars and come to check. She told the officers she'd been watching through her window and I hadn't done anything wrong. She'd seen my mother scratching herself, had even taken a video on her phone. The officers looked confused, glancing between my mother's shocked face and Mrs. D's firm expression. My mom tried to say Mrs. D was confused, that she was elderly and didn't see clearly, but Mrs. D stood her ground. She showed them the video, grainy but clear enough. She told them about all the times she'd seen my mother's behavior, the way birthday presents always disappeared, the way she treated us kids. The officers reviewed the footage carefully, then told my mother that filing a false police report was a serious crime. They warned her that any future false accusations would result in her arrest. They also warned me to stay away from confrontations, though their tone was much gentler. After they left, my mom's mask completely dropped. She told me I'd regret this, that I had no idea what she was capable of. Her voice was ice cold, all pretense of being a caring mother gone. She said I had 1 hour to get out of her house. I tried to argue, but she started calling the police again, so I grabbed what I could carry and left. I spent that night in the school library, hiding behind the stacks until the janitor left. The floor was hard and cold, but at least it was safe. I used the school computers to email my teachers, explaining I might be late to classes due to family issues. I washed my face in the bathroom sink and tried to make myself presentable. This became my routine for the next week, sleeping in the library, showering in the gym during early morning sports practice. My mom wasn't done though. She threw out everything I owned while I was at school the next day. When I snuck back to get more clothes, I found garbage bags on the curb filled with my stuff, clothes, school projects, photos, everything. Some of it was already water damaged from the sprinklers. She'd changed all the locks too, new deadbolts that my bobby pins couldn't hit. I salvaged what I could and stored it in my school locker. She started dating Ryan, our cousin Daniel's older brother who'd just moved back to town. It happened crazy fast. Within a week, he was basically living there. Ryan was 25 and between jobs, the kind of guy who believed whatever sob story a pretty woman told him. My mom fed him lies about her troubled teenage daughter who'd gone off the rails. She probably cried on his shoulder about how hard it was being a single mom with a delinquent kid. I still picked Lucas up from preschool every day. That was was one thing she couldn't stop without raising questions. But I noticed changes in him immediately. He was sluggish, rubbing his eyes constantly, yawning through our walk home. He'd always been an energetic kid, but now he could barely keep his eyes open by 4 p.m. When I asked if he was feeling sick, he said mommy gave him special vitamins that made him sleepy. One day I followed them instead of going to school. I watched from across the street as my mom and Ryan loaded Lucas into the car. He was practically unconscious, head lolling against the car seat. They drove to the pawn shop on the sketchy side of town, the one that didn't ask questions. Ryan stayed in the car with Lucas while my mom went inside with a large bag. Through the window, I saw her pulling out Lucas's birthday presents: the tablet, the dinosaur, even the art set. I took photos with a disposable camera I'd bought, the only kind I could afford after my phone was destroyed. When they came out, I confronted them in the parking lot. Ryan immediately got aggressive, stepping out of the car and getting in my face. He called me a stalker and said he'd have me arrested if I didn't leave his girlfriend alone. My mom stood behind him, fake crying about how I wouldn't leave her in peace. I tried to tell Ryan the truth, but he wouldn't listen. He said my mom had warned him about my lies, my theft problem, my violence. He pushed me back when I tried to show him the photos, sending me stumbling into a parked car. An employee came out to see what the commotion was about, and my mom immediately played victim, saying her disturbed daughter was harassing her again. They left while I was still trying to explain to the confused employee. After that, Lucas started fearing me. When I picked him up from school, he'd stand far away and barely speak. He asked his teacher if someone else could walk him home. When I tried to hug him, he flinched. My own baby brother, who used to run to me with arms wide open, now looked at me like I was a monster. My mom's poison had worked perfectly, turning the one person I was trying to protect against me. I started investigating my mom's activities more carefully. Using the library computers, I found out she'd been collecting disability payments for Lucas. She'd been claiming he had developmental delays and behavioral issues, getting monthly checks from the government. I found coaching videos on her social media from 2 years ago, teaching Lucas to act differently at doctor appointments. She'd trained him to not make eye contact, to repeat words, to have meltdowns on command. Digging deeper, I discovered she'd opened credit cards in both our names. 3 in mine, 2 in Lucas's, all maxed out. Thousands of dollars in debt attached to our social security numbers before we even had a chance at life. The purchases were all her. Designer bags, jewelry, cosmetic procedures. She'd destroyed our credit before I even knew what credit was. I printed everything I could find, building a file of evidence. I tried reporting to CPS, but it backfired spectacularly. The social worker who came to investigate was a young woman named Brittany, who seemed overwhelmed by her caseload. My mom had prepared for this. The house was spotless, Lucas was dressed nicely, and she had Ryan there as the supportive boyfriend. She told Brittany about my mental health issues, showed her the police reports from the assault, and cried about how hard she'd tried to help me. Brittany interviewed Lucas separately, but he'd been coached. He said mommy took good care of him, that his sister was scary and mean. When Brittany asked about the disability claims, my mom had medical documentation, real doctors who'd been fooled by her coaching. The case was closed within 2 weeks with a note about a vindictive teenager making false accusations. My mom's retaliation was swift and brutal. She called my job at the restaurant where I'd finally gotten hired washing dishes. I'd found a small family place where the owner, Mr. Chen, was willing to overlook the age requirements if I worked hard and stayed out of trouble. She told him I'd been stealing from the register, that I had a substance problem, that I was dangerous. Even though there was no evidence, he didn't want drama. He let me go that same day, saying it wasn't working out. I lost my only source of income, the money I'd been saving for a deposit on a room somewhere. Then she took to social media, posting in all the local community groups. She warned people about her violent and unstable daughter, said I was dangerous and shouldn't be hired or trusted. She used my school photo so everyone would recognize me. The post got shared dozens of times, spreading through our town like a virus. Suddenly, no one would hire me. Even the gas station turned down my application. But I remembered something from years ago. When I was younger and my mom was less careful, I'd seen her type her laptop password. She never changed it. It was her birthday and the year she graduated high school, her peak moment frozen in time. Late one night at the library, I logged into her email account. What I found there changed everything. There were emails from 5 years ago with a man named Douglas Chen. He wasn't just some ex. He was her previous husband, from before she moved to our state. They had 2 kids together, daughters named Emma and Rebecca. The emails told a familiar story: theft, manipulation, fake illnesses for the children. But Douglas had fought back, hired a lawyer, documented everything. There were court documents attached showing fraud charges that got dropped when my mom fled the state with the kids. I found more emails between my mom and various men, all with the same pattern. She'd claim to have cancer, share fake medical documents, and they'd send money for treatment. She had templates saved for different sob stories: bar-assed cancer, brain tumors, rare blood diseases. The money would come in through various apps, thousands of dollars from kind-hearted strangers who thought they were helping a dying single mother. She'd been running this scam for years. I also found emails about Lucas's father. He hadn't abandoned us like she said. She'd run when he started asking questions about missing money. He'd been sending child support through the court system, money we never saw. She'd been collecting it while telling us he didn't care about us. There were emails from him begging to see Lucas, offering to pay for visits, asking for just a phone call, all ignored or met with legal threats. I started screenshotting everything, emailing it all to a new account I created. The evidence was overwhelming. Years of fraud, theft, child exploitation. But I needed more than old emails. I needed current proof, something undeniable. That's when I remembered the backup drive my mom kept in her jewelry box, the one where she stored all her important documents for taxes and legal stuff. Ryan must have noticed me watching the house because the next day, there was a break-in at the school. My locker was pried open, my backup drive with all the screenshots stolen along with my school laptop. All my assignments, all my evidence, gone. The security cameras conveniently malfunctioned that day. The school said without proof of who did it, they couldn't help. I had to redo months of work while my teachers gave me suspicious looks, wondering if I'd made up the theft. But I wasn't giving up. I started following my mom and Ryan again, this time being more careful. I borrowed an old phone from a classmate who felt sorry for me, promising to pay her back someday. That's when I caught the grocery store incident. My mom was teaching Lucas to fake a fall near the wet floor sign. She showed him how to cry on command, how to hold his arm like it was hurt. I recorded the whole coaching session from behind a display of cereal boxes. The next day, they executed the plan. Lucas did his fake fall perfectly, screaming and crying while my mom demanded to see a manager. She threatened to sue, said her baby was seriously injured, made a huge scene. Other shoppers gathered around, concerned for the hurt child. But I had the practice session on video, proof that it was all planned. I also had something else, a recording of my mom giving Lucas medicine before they left the house. It wasn't vitamins making him sleepy. I'd seen the bottle and researched the name, Ipecac syrup, something that makes you throw up. She'd been giving him small doses to make him seem sick, probably planning to escalate for more sympathy and donations. The realization made me physically ill. She wasn't just stealing from him anymore. She was poisoning him, hurting his little body for money. I got Lucas to the school nurse the next day, claiming he seemed sick during pickup. The nurse, Mrs. Mitchell, did a basic exam and noted his symptoms: lethargy, upset stomach, pale skin. She asked if he'd been eating properly, and I mentioned the special vitamins his mom gave him. Mrs. Mitchell frowned and made detailed notes, saying she'd follow up with his pediatrician. It wasn't much, but it was official documentation. That night, I reached out to everyone who'd given Lucas birthday presents. I sent them photos of their gifts at the pawn shop, screenshots of the online listings under Ryan's account. Uncle Tommy still had his bike receipt and was furious when he found it for sale online. He'd spent 2 weeks' pay on that bike, wanting to give his nephew something special. Mrs. D had suspected something was wrong all along and wasn't surprised, just disappointed. Grandma was the hardest to convince. She didn't want to believe her daughter could be so cruel. But when I showed her the credit cards in Lucas's name, the debt that would follow him into adulthood, something shifted in her expression. She asked to see more evidence, and I showed her everything: the disability fraud, the poisoning, the coaching videos. Her face went pale and she had to sit down, realizing she'd been enabling this for years. The turning point came when I organized a meeting at Mrs. D's house. I invited everyone who'd been at Lucas's party, plus Douglas Chen, who drove 6 hours to attend. He brought his own evidence from years past, photos of his daughter's stolen presents, medical records showing they never had the conditions my mom claimed. The similarities were undeniable. She'd been running the same playbook for over a decade. We compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Grandma, who'd worked as a paralegal before retiring, knew exactly how to organize it for maximum impact. She created timelines, cross-referenced documents, highlighted the patterns of abuse. We had proof of credit fraud, mail fraud, child endangerment, theft, and poisoning. It was enough to put my mom away for years, but we needed her to show up, to catch her in the act one more time. So I proposed something risky: a second birthday party for Lucas at Mrs. D's house. We'd invite everyone again, make it seem like a peace offering, a chance to make things right. Grandma would call my mom, saying she wanted to heal the family rift and thought a party would help. We'd have new presents for Lucas, everything out in the open, cameras ready to record whatever happened next. It was a trap, but it was our best shot at protecting Lucas permanently. The plan required careful coordination and precise timing, but with everyone finally united against my mother's manipulation, we had a real chance to save my little brother from her toxic grasp once and for all. The party was set for Saturday afternoon. Grandma called my mom Thursday night, putting on an Oscar-worthy performance about family reconciliation and second chances. She said she'd been too harsh, that she wanted to see her daughter and grandchildren together again. My mom ate it up, probably already calculating what new presents she could steal. Grandma even mentioned that everyone felt bad about the misunderstanding and wanted to make it up to Lucas with even better gifts. Friday night, I stayed at Mrs. D's to help set up. We put cameras in strategic spots, one facing the gift table, another by the front door, a third in the corner for wide shots. Mrs. D had this old camcorder she used for her gardening videos, and we set that up too. Uncle Tommy brought a nanny cam disguised as a teddy bear. We weren't taking any chances this time. Douglas arrived that evening with a box of evidence and his lawyer's contact information. He showed us photos of his daughters, now teenagers, who'd cut off all contact with their mother. He said they still had nightmares about the fake medical procedures she'd put them through, the coaching sessions where she'd taught them to act sick. His voice cracked when he talked about finding out she'd been collecting disability payments in their names while telling everyone they were dying. Saturday came fast. I hid upstairs in Mrs. D's guest room, watching through a crack in the door. The party guests arrived early, each bringing wrapped presents as planned. Uncle Tommy had bought another bike, even nicer than the first one. Grandma brought a gaming system. Ryan's parents, who'd finally been told the truth, brought educational toys and looked absolutely mortified about their son's involvement. My mom showed up at exactly 2 p.m., Lucas's hand in hers. She'd dressed him in his best clothes and clearly given him another dose of something. He was swaying on his feet, eyes glazed. Ryan followed behind, looking uncomfortable. Maybe he'd started to suspect something, or maybe he just didn't like being around the family he'd helped terrorize. Either way, he hung back near the door while my mom made her grand entrance. She immediately went into performance mode, hugging relatives and gushing about how wonderful it was to be together again. She kept mentioning how hard things had been, how much she'd struggled as a single mother, laying groundwork for whatever sob story she planned to tell later. Lucas was propped on the couch, barely conscious, while she worked the room like a politician. Present time came after cake. My mom's eyes lit up as the gifts piled up on the coffee table. She kept touching them, reading the tags, probably doing mental math. Lucas tried to open them, but his hands were shaking too much from whatever she'd drugged him with. Uncle Tommy had to help him tear the wrapping paper. With each revealed toy, my mom's smile got bigger and faker. That's when Grandma struck. She stood up and said she had something special for Lucas. Documents showing a college fund she'd started for him, but there was a catch, she said. The money could only be accessed by Lucas himself when he turned 18, and only if he was living in a safe, stable environment. My mom's face twitched, but she kept smiling, saying how generous that was. Then Uncle Tommy mentioned he'd installed GPS trackers in all the toys. Just for safety, he said casually, since kids lose things so easily. He showed everyone the app on his phone, how he could track each item's location in real time. My mom's smile faltered for a second before she recovered, laughing about how high-tech everything was these days. Mrs. D brought out a special gift, a tablet already set up with parental controls that sent usage reports to multiple email addresses. She'd included Grandma, Uncle Tommy, and herself as administrators, for educational purposes, she explained sweetly, so everyone could help Lucas learn. My mom was trapped. Refusing such generous gifts would look suspicious, but accepting them meant she couldn't sell them without getting caught. That's when Douglas stood up from where he'd been sitting in the corner. My mom's face went white, then red, then white again. She hadn't seen him in 5 years, probably thought she'd escaped forever. He introduced himself to the room as her ex-husband, father of her 2 older daughters. Ryan looked confused, clearly having no idea about my mom's previous family. Douglas pulled out his phone and started showing everyone photos. His daughters at the hospital, not for real treatments, but for unnecessary tests my mom had demanded. Bank statements showing money donated for fake cancer treatments. Court documents detailing fraud charges. The room went silent except for the sound of my mom's heavy breathing. She tried to grab Lucas and leave, but Uncle Tommy blocked the door. That's when I came downstairs. My mom's eyes filled with rage when she saw me, realizing she'd been set up. She started screaming that this was kidnapping, that she'd call the police. Grandma calmly pointed out that we were having a family party, and she was free to leave, but Lucas was staying for his celebration. My mom lunged for him, but Ryan actually held her back, finally seeing who he'd been dating. Mrs. D pulled up the pawn shop footage on her laptop. There was my mom, clear as day, selling Lucas's birthday presents while he sat drugged in the car. The timestamp showed it was just hours after his party. Then came my video of her coaching him to fake the grocery store fall. The room watched in horror as she taught a 4-year-old to pretend to be hurt for money. Ryan stepped away from my mom like she was contagious. He admitted he'd helped her sell the items, but thought they were things she'd bought that didn't fit. He'd believed her stories about me being dangerous, about Lucas's disabilities. His parents looked ready to disown him, but at least he was finally seeing the truth. He pulled out his phone and showed us the selling accounts, all the birthday presents from over the years, listed under his name. My mom tried one last manipulation. She started crying, saying she had a shopping addiction, that she needed help, not judgment. She claimed childhood trauma, mental illness, anything to avoid responsibility. But then Mrs. Mitchell, the school nurse, arrived with her documentation. She'd been invited to observe Lucas, and what she saw confirmed the poisoning. She said she'd already reported to CPS with her medical concerns. The final nail came when I played the audio recording of my mom admitting everything. I'd saved it to cloud storage before she destroyed my phone, accessed it from Mrs. D's computer. Her voice filled the room, laughing about selling the presents, calling Lucas her little gold mine, explaining how she'd train him to fake worse symptoms as he got older. Even she couldn't spin that into victimhood. Grandma had already filed for emergency custody that morning. With Douglas's testimony about the pattern of behavior, Mrs. Mitchell's medical concerns, and all our evidence, the judge had granted temporary custody immediately. The papers were served right there at the party. My mom went from manipulation to pure rage, screaming threats at everyone. She said she'd burn the house down, that she'd make us all pay, that Lucas belonged to her. That's when the police arrived. Not because we called them. One of the neighbors had heard her screaming threats and called in a domestic disturbance. The officers recognized her from the false report she'd filed about me. This time, with a room full of witnesses and video evidence, they had cause to arrest her. Credit fraud, child endangerment, theft, the charges started stacking up. Ryan cooperated fully with the investigation. Turns out he'd kept receipts for everything, thinking he was building a future with her. Every pawn shop visit, every online sale, all documented. He even had texts where she'd coached him on what to say if anyone asked about the items. His testimony would be crucial for the prosecution. The arrest was rough. My mom fought the officers, screaming about her rights, demanding her phone call. As they let her out, she kept yelling that Lucas needed his medicine, that he'd die without her care. Mrs. Mitchell loudly told the officers that the medicine was actually poison, and she'd be filing a report. The look of panic on my mom's face when she realized medical professionals were involved was almost satisfying. Lucas slept through most of it, too drugged to process what was happening. When he finally woke up properly the next day at Grandma's house, he was confused but relieved. No more special vitamins, no more coaching sessions, no more fear. It took weeks for the substances to fully leave his system, but gradually the real Lucas emerged. Energetic, curious, happy. The legal process moved faster than expected. With Douglas's previous case file and our mountain of current evidence, the prosecutor had everything needed. My mom tried to get a public defender to argue mental illness, but the pattern of behavior spanning years and multiple families showed clear criminal intent. The credit fraud alone carried serious federal charges. She ended up taking a plea deal, 5 years in prison, mandatory restitution, and permanent loss of custody. The judge also ordered her to pay back all the disability money she'd fraudulently collected. Between that and the credit card debt she'd be paying for decades. Ryan testified against her in exchange for probation and community service. His parents made him get therapy and a real job. I moved in with Mrs. D while finishing high school. She turned her spare room into a proper bedroom for me, even helped me replace the school school supplies that got destroyed. Living with someone who actually cared about my well-being felt strange at first. I kept waiting for the catch, for her to demand something in return. But Mrs. D just wanted to help, proving that not all adults were like my mother. The college applications were stressful but worth it. My teachers wrote letters explaining the gaps in my assignments, the circumstances behind my struggles. The counselor who'd once thought I was troubled became my biggest advocate, horrified that she'd believed my mother's lies. I got into my top choice with a full scholarship, partly based on an essay about overcoming family dysfunction. Lucas started therapy too, working through the trauma with someone who specialized in child abuse cases. He had to relearn that being sick wasn't normal, that mothers weren't supposed to hurt their children for money. The therapist used play therapy, letting him act out his feelings with toys. Watching him slowly trust again, seeing his real personality emerge, made everything we'd gone through worthwhile. Grandma sold my mom's house to pay for Lucas's therapy and future education. She moved into a smaller place with a big backyard where Lucas could play safely. She enrolled him in a new school where nobody knew our history, where he could just be a regular kid. His 5th birthday party was small but genuine, just family who actually loved him, presents that he got to keep. I visit every weekend, helping with homework and just being a big sister. Lucas shows me his toys, all still there weeks later, marveling at having possessions that don't disappear. He's learning to ride the bike Uncle Tommy bought, wobbling down the sidewalk with a huge grin. Sometimes he asks about mommy, but less and less as time goes on. Douglas's daughters reached out eventually, wanting to connect with their half-siblings. We video chat sometimes, comparing stories and supporting each other. They're doing well now, one in college, one finishing high school. They said testifying helped them heal, finally seeing their mother face consequences. We're planning to meet in person this summer. The last I heard, my mom was trying to run similar scams in prison, something about a sick relative needing commissary money. But word had spread about her schemes, and nobody was falling for it. She writes Lucas letters sometimes, but Grandma screens them first. They're always about how unfair everything is, how we ruined her life. Never once has she asked how Lucas is doing. I started my freshman year of college last month. My roommate asked about my family, and I gave her the short version. Complicated, but getting better. She said everyone's got drama, but mine sounded next level. I laughed and agreed, grateful to finally be building my own life away from the chaos. My dorm room might be tiny, but everything in it is mine, bought with money I earned honestly. Lucas turns 6 next month. We're planning another party at Grandma's house, with all the people who stood by us. He's already making lists of what he wants, confident now that birthday wishes can come true. Uncle Tommy's teaching him to ride without training wheels. Mrs. D's helping him plant a garden. He's surrounded by people who love him for who he is, not what they can take from him. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't posted those comments on her selling accounts. Would she still be drugging Lucas, stealing his joy along with his presence? Would I still be sleeping in the school library, showering in the gym? But then I remember that night in her closet, surrounded by designer bags bought with our stolen childhoods, and I know I did the right thing. Lucas deserves better. We both did. Last week, he drew me a picture at school. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands, labeled, "Me and my sister who saves me." His teacher thought it was sweet, not knowing the literal truth behind it. I have it taped to my dorm room wall, a reminder of why I fought so hard. He's safe now, living the childhood he deserves, and that's worth more than all the birthday presents in the world.